Sue, hi, how are you? Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Oh, hi. Yeah.
Pleasure to have you here. I guess I didn't need to ask you to sit down. You're already doing that. So I understand that you actually have a project going on in Hungary. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Okay. Yeah. Hello, everyone. Now I'm in Tokyo, and yeah, I'm doing the project in the Liggett Park in Budapest. It is the House of Hungarian Music, including the Museum for the Music and the music performance space and the music school, so integration. And then it's almost like a finishing. It's like in the middle of the forest and the floating big roof, and then we have an auditorium open to the forest, so it's transparent auditorium. It must be really wonderful experience.
It's called Welcome to the Forest. Now, Lasma, you work at MOME. Is that right?
Yes,
so that's for those of you who don't know, a lot of artists find their calling over there. So you have a bit of the soul of an artist, right?
Me, no,
not at all.
Not really. I come from the business world. I'm trying to bring the business perspective on art and how can we use design in business, not just for form and style, but for purpose.
I see. Okay, but if you put it in an artist context, like the emotional side of things, doesn't the technology and predictability of a smart city take away some of that sort of juice and unpredictability and that wonderful dirtiness of city living?
Well, I guess it depends. If you are the type of person who likes to be surprised by a traffic jam in the morning or your bus running late, then I think that is taken away. But I think for most, the element of surprise is still in the cities because it's the small things, not in the operations. At least that's what I think.
Okay. And Roman, speaking of traffic, you're the regional manager for Bolt, an app that I use all the time. My first question to you is, can I have a promo code?
Of course you can.
Perfect.
Just
all right, ladies and gentlemen, we're done here. I got what I came for. No, but let's talk about the predictability and the sort of the ease that the technological advancements of urban life give us. Like, what does that mean to you?
To me, and also for Bolt, what do you want to achieve? Mainly in respect of the smart cities. Yeah, you want to basically give the city back to the people. And not to the cars. So it's our biggest mission is basically reduce the private car ownership and replace it with the ride-hailing. So basically sharing the driver and the cars, their car sharing, micromobility, and any other connection, also cooperation with the public transportation, so that you can choose and basically really reduce the amount of cars, and then you don't have those surprises with traffic jams and everything. And you have basically more space to live. Like imagine when you will be walking today home, look at the streets, look where are all the cars parked. Imagine that there is free space and you can use it to anything. And then you can appoint the greatest architects to tell us how we can use it. And this is the future we want to see and we are working on.
Nice. Speaking of reducing cars, so you're the state secretary for the green transition in Hungary. So is reducing the amount of traffic and sort of investing in public transport something that you're concerned with?
Yes, this is a very important priority of us, since 20% of all of the CO2 emissions in Hungary come from transport sector, and the majority comes from cars and buses. So therefore, if you can achieve some technological change in transport sector, this is a huge achievement, and we have a chance to meet 2050 climate neutrality objectives. And now we have currently quite an ambitious project with green buses. We just introduced this week 40 electric buses on the streets, and this is a pilot testing of so many electric buses together. So I think we will have very valuable experience how to manage such a big amount of electric buses, because of course charging is not so obvious, and of course that can help also for us to get into a bigger scale and to have also that program expanded to the whole country.
What regions of the city is the pilot program?
So currently it's for the Eucharistic World Congress. This is the testing phase, and we will have also the Hunting Expo coming in 1 month. We will use the same fleet. And starting with next year, we will use that electric buses in cities on the countryside. I think this is also very important, not only to concentrate on the big cities, but the middle-sized cities and smaller cities.
Yeah, that's something that I'd like to get back to later about the urban and rural divide. But Sue, in Japan, are you, where in Japan are you?
In Tokyo.
You're in Tokyo, and I'm sure a lot of you in the audience are familiar with some of the videos we've seen of what public transport is like in Tokyo. So there's a huge embracing of public transport over there. But based on the videos that I've seen, please correct me if I'm wrong, is it working well? What gaps are there to fill in Tokyo?
Well, in a sense, the public transportation, it's quite punctual in a sense, so precise, but the capacity is less than the population. So that is why those kind of a crazy, like the packed train or the traffic jams are happening. And so technology-wise, probably it is already quite like a well established, but then the balances of the real life and the technology is not matching to each other. So that's the problem. And yeah, I think, for example, if those smart technology is getting more and more advanced and solve some kind of the problems, but still those kind of the basic fundamental balances of the life, the kind of the complexity of the life and the super order of the technology, we need to find the good balances. Otherwise, still we, as in Tokyo, we have such a strange kind of a crazy mixtures of the super high technology and the messiness.
So what would you love to see in Tokyo?
Well, I'm from Hokkaido. It's really countryside spaces till I was growing up there until high school. And then I moved to Tokyo. And then, so it is like a super opposite situation, really beautiful countryside, and then suddenly super messy artificial situations. But I felt those kind of the artificial messiness is also kind of comfortable because it is like a human scale and full of unpredictable things and a lot of inspirations and so on. So yes, at some point I think it is important, it is needed to have those kind of a unpredictable messiness. Yeah. But if it is kind of a much more than your capacity, then it is suddenly getting to the uncomfortable situation. So that's the kind of a situation with Tokyo sometimes. Yeah. And yeah.
Well, I mean, I think I told the audience earlier this morning, but if you miss it, I don't know if you could tell by everything about me, but I'm Indian. And that's kind of the opposite of a smart, predictable, safe, digital, modern city. So in the south of India, which I guess is, it's the more calm version of it, it's still absolute madness. My parents live there right now, and it takes them about 2 hours to drive 2 kilometers. And I guess there's a little bit of development to happen over there. But Lasma, you're involved in smart cities a lot and the kind of future. But let's go back to the past. What's the earliest example of smart city development? Do like electric traffic lights count and stuff like that?
Well, I think it depends how you define smart city. Is it a technological city or it's a city that is human orientated? I think the old 1920s future visions of how the cities will look like with huge highways in the middle and people just being inside the cars, that was smart city for their time. So I think all throughout the years we have been moving towards better, or at least we have been thinking that we're moving towards a better life in the city, but there has been different interpretation what it means throughout the times.
So what's the first development? When you track the whole smart city trajectory, what do you say, like, that's the genesis, that's where it started? What kinds of advancements are we talking about?
I would say that it goes as far back as when we introduced like sewage systems in the cities. That's very smart.
Yeah. So I guess, yeah, someone walked around and say, hey, this is dumb. Let's make it smart. And let's put it underground. Yeah. That makes sense. So, Attila, something that you mentioned earlier is about doing things in the countryside and not just focusing on the big cities. When we talk about the development of big cities and we ignore the countryside, one thing that Budapest and Hungary is known for is a huge divide between the big cities and the countryside. So what kinds of steps is the government taking to bridge that gap and to not necessarily modernize everyone, but to unite everyone?
Yes, Hungary has the starting point that it's a Budapest centralized country. However, of course, countryside is also very important, and I think this electric mobility is a very good example to answer your question, because people on the countryside are more afraid of new technologies. And for example, I heard also the comment that, yes, I won't try this electric bus because I will be electrified if I will grab, one part of the bus. And that's why we introduced, for example, in this bus program, some pilots on the countryside. So basically, people on the countryside can try for free those buses, and then they will gain some personal experience. And then they will see that there are more advantages than disadvantages, and I think this is very important to have this personal touch. And once this is done, it will be much easier to convince and to promote those technologies also on the countryside.
What kinds of benefits are you talking about for the average person? What's the benefit for the passenger of riding an electric bus?
Of course, it's a big advantage that you don't have local emission. So that's why air pollution will decrease significantly. This is the biggest advantage. And it's not noisy. And I think people will feel, maybe they do not recognize for the first time that there is no noise, but they start to talk in the bus, and then they will recognize that I can very easily understand my partner. I think this is also very important, and it's the other side of the coin that for service providers it should also provide some advantages, because otherwise they will not invest into that technology.
When you're talking about service providers, what do you mean?
Who are providing public transport service
like
in the cities, yes, for example.
Yeah.
And fortunately for these technologies, we face much smaller maintenance costs, and also there is no need for diesel or gasoline, so it's much cheaper. In the long run, of course, currently such a bus has a higher price. But I think if we will have a decent industry, then that cost will also decrease significantly.
Nice. Sue, is it like that in Tokyo? What are the buses like? Is there a full embracing of electric public transport, or are we still pumping bad things into the air?
Yeah, we are still using rather old style of the buses, and yeah, we need to improve that, because we have a lot of buses moving around in the middle of Tokyo, and that is one of the main method for the people in Tokyo to move around. And then so it is actually will change the whole noises or the air pollutions and everything, but we are not there yet.
Yeah. And what's your favorite thing about Tokyo that I guess Budapest could learn from? Because I imagine you've been here and you've seen what life is like, because you've got a very important project happening over here. And so presumably you have to have an understanding of Hungarian culture, how the city works. What can Budapest learn from Tokyo?
Yeah, I don't know, Budapest should learn something from Tokyo, but what I love in Tokyo is those kind of a chaotic situation, a lot of diversities, and especially from really tiny human scales to the larger scales, the super mixtures of those different scales and different types of the buildings, timber buildings, and then the super high-rise are next to each other or something. So those kind of the super juxtapositions are one of the characteristics of the Tokyo. And then, what I love in Budapest is like the beauty of beauty of the city, but you have like also the human touch, human skills. When we move around, walking around in the city, it is always like full of kind of nice mixtures of the history and the past and the present and the future, and tiny things and rather grand things, but not like a super high rise, but the proper scales. So in a sense, I love those kind of the nice coexistences of the different things.
Nice. Yeah, I do like that about it too. I see we have a question. Yeah, go ahead. What's your name?
My name is Atesh, and I'm from Turkey.
Okay, nice to have you here.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here as well. So I'm really excited about future and also the cities of future. There's vertical farms, there's cleaner, more faster, and that it helps the world, but rather than hurting the world. And I'm really excited to live this life and experience it, and I'm happy that I was born in this time. Just there's this issue when we take China as an example. Technology also puts their nose into the privacy of people as well. And I heard from a Chinese person, my friend, that they have these millions of cameras around the country, and they recognize your face. And there is also this system that they give points to you, depending on how good citizen you are. Yeah. And with these points, they maybe say that, okay, if you don't have enough these points, you cannot get a bank account, you cannot travel out of the country, you cannot have health insurance maybe. And what are your opinions about technology putting their nose into privacy?
Right, I mean, there was literally a Black Mirror episode about this exact thing, you know, people not being able to get something if they don't have enough social capital. So what do you guys think about that? Roman, what do you think about that?
Basically, technology allows you to do stuff. What to do, it's like on us. What do we decide, how we use the technology? Do we use it to control the people? Do we use it for like basically better life for the people? So people oriented. What is the smart city actually? It's just like the vision of how we think about what we do with the cities. It's not that you have to have millions cameras or something like this. It's not the only smart city. Smart city, I think, it's like more like, and that's why I fully agree that it was actually from the very beginning of the history of the population. It's like when you think what do you want to do with the city, how to improve it, it's this like basically smart way or wise way how to think about the cities. And do you misuse it? You know, if you have some authorities which want to misuse anything or somehow control the people, they will do it if the technology exists or not. You know, we here, we were previously living in the communist system as well in the Central Europe. And we know that there was no technology and still the same was happening, even without cameras. So it's like more about how we use the technology than the technology itself. I think the technology provides us the opportunity, and this technology is right. What we do with that can be right and can be wrong as well, and it depends on all of us, how we see it, and on our representatives, how they basically decide, and who do we vote, and what's the plan of them.
I think you've raised a great point. So you as a representative of the government, Attila, do you think that maybe we should start by introducing a culture of positivity and optimism before we embrace these sorts of, you know, gargantuan changes? Or do you think that, you know, let's give them the tools and then have them rise to the occasion? What do you feel about that?
I think we need positive incentives, and anyhow, there are many questions which are not a reason at all, because we do not know the technology. So therefore, first you have to get to know the technology, and then you will see what are the advantages and disadvantages, and then, of course, regulators shall somehow react. And I think it's a very important question, what happens with our data, because now we are working with huge amount of data, and which is a big resource and big opportunity, but of course, if it's misused, then that could be also a big problem. So therefore, it's very important from my perspective that states and at least Europe knows what happens with its data, where it is stored and what are the rules, how those data can handle. Of course, it can be still misused, but at least if we are thinking about, we will have some tools to counter-react. And maybe one additional topic to that, which is slightly similar, this is not only the data and privacy, but the infrastructure itself and the critical infrastructure. I think that will be a key challenge in the future, because if we will electrify everything and we will have only smart technologies, and if there is any problem with the basic infrastructure, then you can block immediately one country. So therefore, to deal more with critical infrastructures and what to do if there is an accident, I think that will be crucial.
Just to add about the example in China, I think this type of problem is not only in China, but also, for example, in Toronto, one of the most smart city districts. The development was cancelled because people protested against the idea of having sensors everywhere, of being monitored in terms of whether your apartment is empty or if there's a person, how many people are there, where do you go, what type of transportation to use. So I think it's an issue everywhere, and one of the solutions I think for this, which comes from a different industry, I think are data trusts. So that it is not the city that owns this data, but it's a separate organization, a public-private partnership. I know in the UK there is a biobank which holds more than 500,000 of biomedical data of people. And then this board comes together and they can decide, okay, who should have access to this data and how it could be used. Right. Is this use case good or not? Is it ethical or not? And I think in the board they also have philosophers and not only medical professionals. So I think with smart cities, I believe that's also something to look into in the future as a more neutral way of using this data.
Nice, I think that sounds fair. I hope that answered your question. Yeah, it looks like we have another one. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Thank you, everyone. Hi, everyone, I'm Bence, and I would like to follow up on the question related to China, not China, but using cameras in the city infrastructure. One example that I would like to bring is the outside district of Copenhagen, Nordhavn, because they have actually used an energy data warehouse. The basic concept is that they use cameras and they try to analyze the city infrastructure, solar production, wind energy costs. And my question to you would be, either from a creative standpoint or also an infrastructural standpoint, that can cameras and observation tools be used as city design, either in a creative field or in a practical field, so we can actually live with cameras surrounding us to collect data, to collect every information about our life in the cities? Do you think this can be our future in Europe as well?
Roman, would you like to speak to that?
Like for me, like the biggest question is like, do we even need the cameras? Yeah, I don't see like smart city necessarily using cameras. Yeah? Why? You know, why do we have to use cameras? It's like about design, yeah? how we design things, yeah? How we design the architecture, yeah? How we think about the public transportation, how the public works with the private sector. Right? It's like what we are thinking a lot about. Yeah? It's like that our future plan is to also into the Bolt app include the public transportation data, and then you have ride-hailing, car-sharing, micro-mobility, public transportation, and you have the wise combination of this. Do you need cameras for that? No, not at all. Like really, it's just one technology which is used for something. In some respect, it makes sense. In other, I don't know. Like for me, it's like really like more about what do we do to make the living in the cities better. It's what and how. It should be like not that every technology I have to use, but it's like more thinking like in complex, what do we have and how do we use it? And then about the data, it's like for sure, like we share some, of course, anonymous data with cities as well about the transportation, about how the people move. But why? Again, because then they can better optimize for, I don't know, where we need more bike lines, for example, whether there should be some bus connection into some location. Where is it needed? Yeah, where is like the biggest stack and everything. Those are the useful information with the data which the governments can use, the city governments or the even national governments. Yeah, and this is how I see how we should use the technology we have. in basically how to make the life of people better. And for me, it's like always like the question is like from the regulators, from everybody, what do we want to do? It's the same question as before. What do we want to do with it? How do we use it? We have some tools, some technology. How do we use it? What do we want? And for me, as citizen, it should be the question should be how we make our lives better here. And it doesn't have to be through technology. Yeah? It's really through design. How we basically think is like a simple thing can make a lot of a better life, and not necessarily like is it the cameras. Yeah? It's always like you have pros and cons. You basically balance it. Yeah? It's like somebody say more cameras brings more safety, but is it always? And this should be this public discussion, and that's why it's good that those questions are arising, how we should use it and everything, and then we should derive to some like reasonable solutions.
You've raised a really good point, which I'd love to get Sou's opinion on. So how is it that architecture brings something better to someone's life? And how does that sort of feed the soul of the city as a whole? Like, how does, in what ways do you as an architect try to enrich people's lives?
Well, yeah, actually the architecture, for example, architecture itself is not like the smart technology anymore. It's rather old technology. But even by using this old technology, it is scary. We can control the movement of the people, or control of the feeling of the people. So that's the point I always remind me. It is really like an important responsibility for us. Because if you like to use the architecture in a bad way, worst way, then it is really scary things, terrible things. If you can make it better way, then we can make people's life better. And then the technology-wise, it's always the same. And then I myself like to use or make the architecture to open the freedom of the people more and more open choices and the diversities and accepting, allowing people to do whatever they like or whatever, more than whatever they like, to inspire people to get new ideas to do the new behaviors or something like that. So those kind of as a basic direction, I love to create those kind of the open spaces for people.
Nice, openness, optimism.
Yeah, but it is always, I understand it is always like if you like to do good things, then it is always quite close next to the bad things. So we need to find the right point.
Absolutely, that's something I'd love to get back to. So put a pin in that. I see we have another question. Go ahead.
Hey there. So basically, I want to ask back to the previous questions. So you mentioned that the simple solutions can be quite good in the situation, but I wanted to say quite the opposite. What if we used cloud technology? Basically, it's becoming even cheaper. And if we want to electrify the transportation, the vehicles, more sensors becoming available, and also the internet is faster. So what if we used cloud technology and third-party data? Thank you. Data trust to analyze the traffic and basically to find weaknesses, and then we could improve these weaknesses. So, is there a plan in the near future, for example, in Budapest, to use cloud technology to find and analyze weaknesses and help the traffic getting better? Do you know? Maybe.
This sounds like your department.
No, it's a great idea, and I think we cannot imagine now what opportunities big data will bring. And therefore, I very much agree that, of course, this data and artificial intelligence could help us to find those weaknesses, and then we can find some solutions. But I think I agree with the approach that sometimes the simplest things are the smart things, and I think where we are still lagging behind, this is connecting existing solutions and to increase the complexity of systems, because that will bring a lot of new potential. I think one very good example what happens now with renewable electricity generation. What was the trend until now? We will install some solar panels, we will install some wind mills, and then we will put the electricity on the grid, and then we will distribute. But now we started to have more decentralized, smaller systems, which are self-suppliers. So basically, they don't need anything from the grid because they can produce, they can consume, they can optimize. And these smart, small grids, I think that's a very good example how to connect already mature technologies and what kind of benefit it can bring. So that's connecting the dots. I think that's very important, and that will be smart.
Cool. I hope that answers your question. Is that all right?
Thank you, thank you.
Add something like we are already doing this. We are cooperating with many cities. We are open to basically work with any city on this and exactly doing this what you are asking. Yeah. So we are sharing the data, and the cities are using it for those. Of course, it's not the solution of all problem. Yeah? It's like that's why I said at the beginning the mission is that really reduce the private car ownership, and then it will be like major thing. But until we are there, we are doing this and exactly using the data to share with the authorities and basically find out the better solutions to the traffic.
We have another question.
So, as far as I've interpreted this little discussion of yours, the big talking point is to make the lives of people better living in the city, and that's still up for discussion how you would actually go ahead and do that, because we obviously have the technology to just really maintain a close look at other people's lives, and that can be really used for malicious and evil purposes. We've discussed China. That is not a very good thing to follow. Please don't do that. I don't think you will. But how do you have any basic idea what you would do with said technology, or is that just still just a faraway dream that, yes, we're going to do that eventually?
Actually, that raises a good point. So why don't we go around and each of you say one thing, like one pipe dream that you would love to see with the use of the technological development right now. Let's start with you, Lasma.
Well, if I would be the city and I would have to choose where to invest the most, I think it's really connected to reducing inequality, thinking about what type of solutions would really help with this, because if we just invest in cameras and all the cool things in one district, of course it's not good for the whole. I would probably go with public transportation system overview, analysis, and then restructuring if needed.
Nice. Attila?
Yes, for me, maybe air pollution. How you can reduce air pollution. And here you have different choices. And I think one of the most promising choices next to electrifying, hydrogen. And this is it's a known technology, but how to produce green hydrogen and use it for transport purposes, this is a new question. And I think here we have, it's an infant, since it's an infant technology, therefore there is the question, what is the direction? And maybe to your question and answer, we should have some pilot projects and to see what will work, most probably, from technological perspective, but also economically, because at the end the market should carry on that technology, otherwise we do not have the chance to introduce this new technology. And here we have also a new hydrogen strategy. That's what we developed the last months, and we have some very interesting projects how and what you can do with hydrogen, but we don't know which project will be the best at the end. So therefore you need some kind of try and error approach here with new technologies, but I'm optimistic in this sense.
Public transport investigating hydrogen, Roman?
Actually, like our biggest goal as a company is like exactly air pollution. So we have like all the green plan, which means that we are already carbon neutral in Europe. In all our business lines, even in micromobility, we are even carbon positive right now. In Budapest, majority of our cars are hybrid or electric. And for those who are not, and the CO2 we produce as a company or our partner drivers, we basically compensate with the other project like planting the trees and like other CO2 positive projects. So this is our big topic. If I should say something new, what I would like to see is like not like connected highly with like super high technology as you would imagine, but like using the super simple technology we already have for years would be for me great. If I would love to see that like basically we as citizens can handle all the conversation and contacts with the authorities, basically any office you can imagine, remotely as well. And for me, this is like no like super high technology to be used. It's like technology we all use, or I guess all use during our work, like emails and like, I don't know, remote payments and everything, internet basically. If we use it and nobody have to go physically to the offices, it would be great for me.
My favorite thing to do is to go to the kormányablak. Just kidding. Sue, what would you love to see? What's your dream for the use of technology?
Well, yeah, it may sound a bit abstract, but I am dreaming to have like the communication between natural things and artificial things. It is like coordinating the nature and the artifacts to each other by probably sensorings and monitorings and reacting something, because for now the nature itself is coordinating to each other as like ecosystems, but the nature and artifacts is always like a competing or like a, yeah, it's not harmonized. So if some kind of the technology could make more like a harmony and coordination of natural environment and the architectural environment like a city together, then that could be wonderful, beautiful, I think.
I think that was beautifully put. I hope that answers your question.
Oh yeah, I did notice a lot of overlapping themes in the basic ideas, which is, well, for one, having a plan that is very reassuring, that calms my spirit down. But so
are you by any chance an anxious person?
Huh?
Nothing.
But yeah, as far as I've noticed, there's a big focus on, well, for example, the nice lady in the nice jacket mentioned that.
Thank you.
Great jacket, Lasma.
It is a very good jacket. But yeah, what she said is very reassuring. That she mentioned that it's kind of insanely worthless if you just dispense all this technology into one little district that is just beautiful neon lights and the rest is just poverty.
That's exactly right.
Yes,
yeah.
So spreading these resources, that is a great idea.
Yeah.
Also, what the gentleman said on the big screen is, and that I think is very much overlaps with what everybody else said, is that kind of we have to find a way to live in this big utopia Star Trek city, which is in accordance with basically nature, so we won't get into trouble for killing the planet. But yeah, I think good. There's a good plan.
I'm really glad you're reassured. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're satisfied. I'm certainly feeling a little bit more optimistic about it. So please give a warm welcome and warm thanks to our speakers over here. We had Lasma Ivaska, Attila Steiner, Roman Sysel, and live from Tokyo, Sou Fujimoto.